Hey everyone, Omni here. Since we're going to be Omnifying and playing through the entire Dark Souls series, we need to get started on Omnifying Dark Souls II. So here we are in the game, and I'm ready to start disassembling this game down to the bones and create some reliable hooks into data points we need in order to implement our Omnified systems. Of these data points, the most needed are the player's health and the player's chords. So let's see if we can create some hooks and pointers to that right now. Now we're not going to make the same mistake we did with Dark Souls 1, where I was searching for unknown values. We know what the health is, it's in our player stats. As we can see right there, it tells us our health 968. So that's our maximum health. And I see that my health's not full. Let's get it full. There we go. I can assume then I have 968 HP. Do a search for 968 HP here. It's gonna be a 4-byte value, of course. FromSoft and other Japanese developers love using 4 bytes to hold the health, not floating point. All right, we have 349 of these in memory. Let's take some damage in, and then I'm going to just say it's decreased in value after some damage has been taken. Hello. Feel like hitting me? Hi. Ow. Took some damage. Just gonna get to some safety here, and then we're going to scan again, looking for those decreased values. Decreased values. There we go, we're down to 25. Let's heal then, and say we increased our value. We are done healing. Let's look for increased values. There we go, and we have 4 values here, all at 968, which we know is our max health. Let's then just add these to our address list, and I'm going to just modify them until we find the one that actually affects our health. Not that one. Nope. There we go, that's our health. All right, let's then look for some code we can hook into to grab a pointer to our player's health as the game is running. Here we go, we have all these functions going off. Let's take a look at some of them. Let's start with the one that's executing the most. Here it is right here. We can see it's being accessed with an offset of 168. We'll see what that struct is in a little bit, but let's see how many addresses this is accessing. So as we can see here, this is accessing more than just our health. So I'm not very interested in this. I want to find something that hopefully might only be accessing my health. That'd be lovely. Makes my job easier. I'm gonna go through these until I find one that is accessing just my health. Let's go to the next one. Here's the next one. And this is also accessing a bunch of other addresses. Okay, we went through a bunch of these, then we got to this one here. And gonna see what this is accessing here. And this is only accessing my health. So this is the winner here, my friends. So we can hook it into here to grab the player's health reliably, hopefully. But before we do all that, let's just see what we're working with here. I've learned from these other games that we shouldn't just assume that the struct is just for health. It could be a player struct, who knows? Let's take a look at RCX here, which is the base of this address here. I'm gonna open up structure dissect, throw that in there. Defining structure, okay, this is the player control struct. Now I've seen this struct in other FromSoft games, and it's always been a child of the player instance struct, which would seem to have been the root struct of either the player and enemies, containing all their other structs. Could this be the instance struct in Dark Souls 2? Who knows? I'm seeing here, we have a physics module here actually. Interesting, motion, operator, we got an action control one. Attack damage. This player control struct here, look, in Dark Souls 2, looks like it's the instant structs in the other games. So I'm gonna say that this bit of code up here is actually gonna be our hook into the actual player struct. And the health can be found on the player struct. When I say player struct, this is the struct that contains the base of all information for that entity. It's the Holy Grail and disassembly stuff. Very interesting. All right, so as you can see here, it's 168 is the offset. That is health. So let's label this as current health here. We have 2 other values here, 968, which is what our health used to be, so this is most likely the maximum health. I don't know what this 969 is. In the status window, 968 was listed. Looks like just by increasing this 3rd number here, that's when I see my bar begin to increase. There's more of a gap between the red and the empty. 1200 here, interesting. And then what about this? 1150. Oh, interesting. So I know when you die in this game, you hollow a bit. And this might have to tie into that. Perhaps this is like the max health for your current hollowed state. And this is the max possible health here. I'll just label this as maximum health. Maybe maximum effective health. So this is the max health, and this is probably the maximum effective health given your current state of hollowing. There you go. Great. So we're gonna create a hook then for here, and this will be called our player hook. This is getting our player struct. Great. We're gonna do that right now. All right, here's the prepared hooking code that will be injected into that code we were just looking at, and it will be responsible for getting the root player struct. So let's allocate symbol for player. It will definitely be the representation of the player in its totality. I register that as a symbol. This is very simple. We're just going to have player point to RCX. We can find all this stuff on right here. Basically, player will be the point to the player's own player control instance. We don't have to do any filtering here because apparently it only grabs the players. That's about it. Let's make sure we just unregister that symbol right here. We just declared and deallocate it. Fantastic. All right, I'm gonna load this into my cheat engine then, and then see if it works out just fine. Got it hooked in, no crashing, great. Let's add an entry for health. Off the player struct, I think it was 168. Here's our current health. Very good. All right, now that we got the health, let's see if we can get the coordinates in quick order. And we're gonna start actually by looking at that player control struct. We're gonna open up that structure dissect again, and we can just use the pointer we have now, player. I'm gonna load up the player control struct here, and I noticed that there was a physics controller module, and in Sekiro, that's where the coordinates are stored in that game for the character. So is there anything that looks like a coordinate in here? Yes, these look like coordinates, X, Y, and Z. Okay, let's see if when I manipulate this, if my character goes up in the air. He does not. So these appear to be calculated values, not a source of truth. That's a bit disappointing. But the nice thing is that even though they are not the source of truth, they are a truth. And I can probably be assured that this is probably my actual Y coordinate here. So I can do a search then for this value, and then maybe we'll get a small list of results that will help me find out the actual source of truth for the Y coordinate. We have 1300, wow. Well, it shouldn't be changing, so let's get rid of things that are changing. All right. We have a few things here. I did notice that with the health, it seems that the user data, or I guess creature instance data, is gonna be in this range here, starting at 7FF4 and up. It was very much the same as Sekiro. I'm gonna add these then to the address list, and let's just see if any of these are my Y coordinate. Then I'm all to 15. There we go, that caused some movement. So one of these is the Y coordinate. Let's narrow down and find out which ones are the Y coordinate. We're gonna do that by just selecting the list one half at a time, seeing if that does anything, and then deleting that half if it doesn't do anything, or delete the other half if it does. All right, after isolating down the actual Y coordinate, we came to some very interesting conclusions here. As you can see here, I have two separate entries here, two separate addresses for the Y coordinate. This one is what I call the immediate Y coordinate. I'm gonna change this to 17. As you can see, my character has moved up. You might notice though that he isn't falling down. That's because it's not actually his Y coordinate. If I move a little bit, I go right back down. Real y coordinates actually stored here in what I call the real y coordinate. However, if I don't move the immediate to 17, I just stay here until I move. Or if I do both, then we fall down. That's quite interesting. So it would appear that this is the actual source of truth for the y coordinate here, as this determines where I actually am. Regardless of what it looks like, I'm actually up there. When I take my next step, that's where we start. However, as far as maybe purposes of locality and actually where we are, not to get too existential here, this also defines it. So I suppose we do need to actually be updating both. Now, worst case scenario, for teleportitis code, stuff like that, if I need to just choose one, we have to set the real one, and that's okay. Because I'll be moving anyway, and it'll update the character's location as appropriate. However, I think it's important to capture both. Luckily, they're both quite close to each other in memory. So when we have one, we have the other. So it doesn't really matter. For all intents and purposes, we're gonna be updating the real one and whatnot. And if we need to, we can update the immediate as well. We know where it is. But of course, something that did not surprise me, and it shouldn't surprise you maybe, I like to get coordinates through constant access. I don't like to have to move to get a hook to fire. If we look at what's accessing the real coordinate here, nothing's accessing it until I move. Now there's tons of accessing. That's great, but kind of useless to me. I can't use this as a hooking point. I would need something that's going off all the time. Better yet though, is if I can find something that will help me find where this coordinate is relationally, that is from the player control struct. Now, looking at the addresses here, they are in somewhat significantly a different place in memory than my control struct or my player struct. So this is 7FF4 8B, this is 7FF4 8E. It's, quite down the line here. And scrolling through the struct for the player control, we didn't really see anything that pointed to here. But let's see if we can find it. It might just be buried deep, deep down inside that struct. So the immediate coordinates here, they are constantly being accessed. Makes sense. Where the player is updated as soon as I change it. Let's look at the second one here. RAX plus 1AO. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for where does this RAX come from? That'll kind of help me build up the relational tree between the player struct and then this. First of all, what is this? Let's look at RAX here, which is the base. Paste that in there and see what we got. Okay, HKP rigid body. So this is a struct I've seen in Sekiro and also I think in Dark Souls 1. So our coordinates are inside the rigid body struct. Very good. There's no pointer to the player control from here, which is unfortunate. So we need to find out where this HKP rigid body is in our player control struct. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe we have a bunch of rigid bodies, so we have to find the correct one. Well, where's it getting it from here? This looks suspicious here, this call. Okay, RAX is what we're concerned about here. And it's getting it from RCX plus 20. Of course, RCX gets overwritten right here. How lovely. Let's put a breakpoint right here then before it gets overwritten. And we're gonna have it break on RAX equaling what our HKP rigid body is. Okay, so here's the RCX we care about. What is this? I'm gonna throw that into the structure dissect. This is an HKP character rigid body. Okay. HKP rigid body, HKP character rigid body. Gotcha. So where does that come from? Looks like that comes from an RCX plus 1D0. Of course, that gets overwritten by itself here. However, it gets backed up into R13. So R13 plus 1D0 will give us that HKP character rigid body. So what's that? Let's take a look at that. So that's PX character rigid body, which, you know what, is something I remember seeing in that player control struct. Let's see if we can locate this. I'm gonna open up structure dissect for the player. can just use our pointer there, do player control. And I believe this actually might be in the physics module, which is great. That's where it was in Sekiro. However, it wasn't so deep into it, because I think this is going to be quite deep into it. And here it is, PX character rigid body. And it's going to be plus 1 DO from there. There it is. So you can see there's a whole bunch of different rigid bodies going on here. And here's a rigid body. And then what was the offset in the rigid body? I think it was 1A0. And here they are, our coordinates. So 1A0, this is the immediate value we were looking at before, and the source of truth is going to be at 1C0. Make sure that this is the actual source of truth. Let's freeze the real X and see if I can move. Good, I can't move on the X-axis anymore. So there we go. We've managed to find the coordinates for the player relationally from a base player struct, which is great. Not easy to do in some games, and it's wonderful. And hopefully something we can do for enemies as well. I assume there's an enemy instance struct. I can find an enemy's coordinates and link them up to health. That's just wonderful for doing lots of crazy fun stuff. So we don't need to actually have another hook for this. Since we know it's in the player control struct, we can actually create another pointer for the player chords, because that's quite convenient when dealing with code, just to have a separate pointer for it, and we can wire that up inside that code. So let's go to that code here. I'm gonna allocate another pointer for the player chords. Let's register a symbol for it. I need to back up, I think, 2 registers here so I can go deep into it. Let's back up RAX and RBX. Okay, RCX is the player struct. So let's set RAX equal to that character physics control struct, which is going to be RCX plus 100. As you can see down here, 100. Next, we want to go to the PX character rigid body struct, and we're going to have that stored in RBX, RAX plus 40. We're going to go to that HKP character rigid body struct, which is 1D0. So move on to RAX, RBX plus 1D0. That's that HKP character rigid body struct, and then to the HKP rigid body struct, which is 20. Move to RBX, RAX plus 20. This will be, I believe, the base of our coordinates. The coordinates then can be found at 1A0 for the immediate, and then 1C0 for the real, or the actual source. I don't know what this interim set of coordinates is. 1B0, I don't know what that does. We can find out that later. So I need to have my pointer then for player chords point to RBX. Just add some code to clean that stuff up. There you go. Hopefully this doesn't crash the game. Let's save that. And oops, we had an extra 8 right here. Let's get rid of that, reload it. Great. Game did not crash, wonderful. Let's add some entries in. We can use that player chords pointer here. It's gonna be for the X. And let's just, default to that real one. So it'll be player chords plus 1C0, I believe. There we go, wonderful. There's our X coordinate. And I love that we're using relational data to do this. Really makes working with it very easy. And it's gonna let us do some things that we don't normally get to do. There's that real Y coordinate. One C8 for the Z coordinate. These chords are only referred to, I guess, during movement. It's a combination of this and the, I guess, immediate chord, which is 20 above these in memory. But for all intents and purposes, just updating these will essentially update the location of the character. But it's important we take this through the Omni test before we consider that we've actually found some reliable data here. Let's do the Omni test. Looks good.